Hey folks, in this episode we are talking to Andy O'Connor. He is the program manager for Startup Ireland, an organization trying to make Ireland more attractive and habitable for startups. They are creating a manifesto and for the government to take some actions to help assist the startup community. He's also the CEO and founder of Zappaz, a company that are, I don't want to butcher this, but basically trying to improve the engagement with company or service or organization. That's the best word. With an organization's clients or customers. I hope you enjoy and learn something. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Albert. In this show, I talk about technology, building a company as a CTO and co-founder, and have guests to discuss their roles in technology and entrepreneurship. Today we're joined by Andy O'Connor, program manager at Startup Ireland and CEO and founder of Zappaz. Did I pronounce that right, Andy?
More or less.
More or less.
We're still struggling with that one.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, David.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Startup Ireland and
Zappaz?
Maybe you start with how you pronounce that properly.
Yeah, well, I can give a bit of background actually to why we chose that name. There's an interesting story behind that, but Zappaz it's an online platform, and the vision is quite audacious on it. It's we want to help drive human progress online through representation and engagement. So it's like an online engagement platform where people get to answer 6 questions and give feedback to influence like products or communities.
Oh.
That's what we're driving towards anyway, but we're still working on that elusive product market fit.
No, it sounds very good. I'd love to get the answer to 6 questions from my users.
And then Startup Ireland then is like a non-profit organization in Ireland, and what we do there is the vision there is to make like Ireland the best place globally to start, scale and succeed.
Mm. Excellent.
So that's quite an audacious vision as well. And I only joined Startup Ireland in January, and it was really because of the Zappaz platform that I ended up engaging with Startup Ireland, but I can explain that as well.
Yeah, so how did that happen? What was it that...
So essentially, the Zappaz platform, because it's like an engagement platform, and to try and, it's a platform where people get to give feedback to like influence a goal or a project. So, with that aim in mind, then I started approaching in January. I finished the New Frontiers program, which, I did, over in DIT Grange Corman, which was a great program. And then.
That's a pre-accelerator.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It's an Enterprise Ireland led like incubation platform, that runs for 6 months. So, exited that, had done some initial beta testing, and then released sort of like on a soft release in January. And then I was like, oh, I've released. Now I have to go find people to use it. So I approached Startup Ireland. Andrew Parrish there is brilliant. He's been there from the outset. And, so in January, I'd seen that they had released this like startup manifesto before in 2017. I knew what Startup Ireland was about. I thought they were an interesting organization, and they did well for the startup community in Ireland. And I saw an opportunity to like use an online platform to build like engagement for this manifesto. So instead of like trying to put together like a select number of people from the community together to try and build a manifesto, to kind of crowdsource it. And so what we did was we asked the startup community 6 questions to inform the agenda of the Startup Manifesto. So this year we didn't have an agenda for the Startup Manifesto. So the agenda wasn't specifically tax or wasn't specifically any particular agenda. We said what we'll do is we'll ask 6 questions of the community, try and get as much feedback as possible, and give people the opportunity to sort of inform our agenda. And so that's what we ended up doing over the last 4 months.
Okay. So, I'm not sure where we should start. So the Zappaz name.
Yeah, so the Zappaz name.
Where did that come from?
So it was actually during, at the start of the New Frontiers program, it was actually known as SamePage. And I had acquired samepage.com. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's been a powerful, journey of experience over the last year or so, because I was like, if I have .com, I am set.
Yeah.
And there was another name on it originally. I didn't have the .com. I said, no, I need to have the .com. It's a public engagement platform. So if it's a B2C, it seems like the advice, especially from the YC side, which I follow quite a lot, they advise, you might as well have the .com. Yeah. And so, there's no benefit to not having it. So I was like, right, I'll push for the .com of a good name. My partner, she came up with a really good name, and it was like, this should be called SamePage. And I was like, that is a really good name. And so and then I checked the samepage.com domain, it's gone. And of course, instead of putting effort into my startup, which I should have done, I put effort into trying to get the .com. So it was a guy, it turned out it was a guy in New York that owned it. And over the space of about 3 or 4 months of engagement, and I was chatting with him, I buttered on the Irish charm as much as I could. Eventually, he agreed to sell it. He didn't have any particular use for it. He bought it in the .com boom, but would have been worth more. And he realized that, they don't go for as much anymore. And we agreed on a price. I bought it, and I was like, that is it. I am sold. Samepage.com is it. And then realized that there's this thing called trademark or an IP. Yeah. And realized then that there's another company out there that have an online platform called SamePage. Oh. And I'm not sure, the products would not be the same. Mm-hmm. But I think I've learned a bit about trademarks as well, and it seems like from a trademark perspective, they've got quite an antiquated view on IP or trademarks. And if you're an online platform, it seems like it's it doesn't matter whether you're an online platform for, selling cars or selling carpets. Yeah. It seems like you kind of have a conflict of interest there. Maybe not. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was too much of a gray area. Yeah. I would just change the name. I stressed over it for about 6 weeks. And then I read another one of Paul Graham's posts, and it was basically, if a name is not sufficiently bad, it is sufficiently good. And I was like, I have to take that to heart. And so we whittled it down, and we just picked that one.
Does it stand for anything, or is it just...
No.
So you made a word.
It was just a bit catchy. It might not be the end name, but it's good enough. It's recognizable anyway. If we can build a brand around it. That's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what is it that you're doing within Startup Ireland, and what is it that you personally are trying to achieve? Yeah,
so when I joined, I approached Startup Ireland first from a platform perspective. Mm. And it was a tool to be used to help them achieve, defining the agenda, building a startup manifesto, and keeping people engaged throughout the journey of that manifesto. So, if you do a SurveyMonkey survey, the survey disappears. Yeah. So this is kind of like a simpler survey. It doesn't disappear. You're kept updated. You answer the 6 questions. You're kept updated on the progress of the manifesto. So we have that on the system at the moment. So as soon as the manifesto is drafted, and we will release that for a public consultation, and we'll do that on the site. So you'll see that it was, we're getting one step closer to having that manifesto submitted as a pre-budget submission in September. Mm. So that's the tool. And so when I approached with the tool, I realized I was like, so is there a marketing team that, that could use this? And it was basically, it was like, well, if you get involved, you're going to have to drive this a bit. I think Andrew Parrish, he was quite cute. He realized very quickly, like, that here's a guy that is willing to get involved. And so it became quite apparent fairly quickly that there was an opportunity to get involved and drive the report as well. So not only then we kind of came to an agreement, and I said, look, if I'm going to get involved, we'll do a 6-month plan, and we'll get the manifesto out. And I have enough passion, I guess, about the startup community, and I've followed Startup Ireland for a while. So I was and I like getting involved in like non-profits. So I saw an opportunity to do like 8 hours, a couple of hours volunteering a week, and to sort of drive it, but then use the tool as one channel. And that's what we've done.
That's one thing, with volunteer organizations. If you suggest something, suddenly you become the chairperson of that. So I remember that from the Junior Chamber of Commerce back in the United States that I was a member of.
Wow.
If you brought something, it was a place for young adults to hang out and drink beer and try to make business contacts. And then if you suggested something, you owned it.
There's great power in that, right?
Yeah. If I'd understood that better when I was younger, the way to get unbelievable amounts of experience in positions you should never have the right to have the experience in, it's volunteer organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can get organizational and nearly managerial experience just by volunteering for things that.
I think that's a very good takeaway, actually, from volunteering in nonprofits, and that's been my experience as well. Throughout the years, I would have volunteered in different, even small community and clubs and things, and the experience you get is absolutely brilliant. But I like the freedom that if you come up with an innovative or a new suggestion or a creative way of doing something, you can own it and you can drive it then in the organization.
That's true. Yeah, you don't have layers of management that will squash.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you have more flexibility.
But you also have less budget. Usually.
Absolutely.
So what is it that like the actual specifics of what Startup Ireland give to startups? What would I, as a startup founder, directly get out of that? Or is it more tangential based on trying to cultivate the ecosystem?
Yeah, so we don't directly offer any support to like startups directly. What we do is we are like a more visible advocate for the startup community.
Gotcha.
And try and represent the startup community and to like accelerate a change in culture. So it's to help, benefit the startup community, but also to benefit the ecosystem and the economy as well.
I gotcha. So like in the manifesto that you have a nice copy of here.
Dog-eared.
Yeah. I was looking at it on the website and there were 4 main sections? Is that right?
So that's how the 2017-2018 manifesto was organized. So we've organized it a bit differently this year. Mm-hmm. So we decided not to have, there were pillars. So there's 4 pillars like talent and the other 3. And this year we decided, because we were crowdsourcing it a bit more, that we'd leave it a bit more freeform.
Gotcha.
And I suppose like when you see with these pre-budget submissions and manifestos, it can be difficult to get the ear of people in power, and it's, if you look at it from their perspective, I suppose, they've got conflicting agendas, conflicting communities that are coming at them with, different sort of opportunities. And so we didn't want to take the same approach that was used for other reports, where there's like lots of recommendations and no clear set path to how to implement them. Instead, this year, we based on the 6 questions, we wanted to figure out exactly what was if we were to make one change, what would it be? And sort of start with that. And then to be able to deliver, a bit of a backdrop to explain exactly what benefits a better startup ecosystem could have for Ireland. Because I think, again, it's all too often when we're working it every day, we're all startups here, and we all understand that, how a startup would cause benefit within the ecosystem and beyond. But I mean, other people outside of that might not necessarily understand. So what we wanted to do was to sort of build a story and be able to give lay a bit of groundwork into recommendations that, would start from, if we were to make one clear change, what would it be? And then to try and set a plan forward from that.
Do you have that one clear?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, I think, if we were, there's we've one clear sort of vision in the manifesto, or one clear message, and that is that an innovation economy, as opposed to an economy based around foreign direct investment, is better for the economy because it has a sustainable growth model. Mm. And that's the clear message that we're trying to give, that sort of, that paradigm shift, understanding too, because, foreign direct investment is doing so well for Ireland at the moment. And we're not suggesting that that we try and disincentivize foreign direct investment. We want that to continue. Yeah. And we want to build upon it. And I mean, again, when you're working in a startup, you understand very clearly, the benefits of innovation. It's even innovation, entrepreneurship in a company, the benefits of innovation lead to fundamental changes that benefit, an organization, or if it's a startup, it's their customers, and it's trying to innovate to add more value that was there before. And so if you were to take that from an ecosystem perspective, it's trying to demonstrate that innovation on a systemic level, where if we can provide an ecosystem that is embraced culturally within Ireland. So if we can embrace the creative nature of Ireland and say, here is a model where we can take that the raw creativity, turn it into innovation, and then to add value back sort of into the country, internationally, and also to add value back into the economy as well.
Okay. Looking forward to seeing more. Well, I understand what you're saying. And, I took the survey, so I remember some of the different points. And what you mentioned there actually sort of encapsulates a number of those elements. And one of the biggest ones, in my opinion, is the cost of living is impossible.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that is quite likely tied to direct foreign investments, and the history of the way business has been done here. So I can see how changing that area.
And cost of living is actually is under report only because we asked the 6 questions to the community and realised that cost of living and housing is a huge barrier, and it's almost up there with financial supports. Mm. And so financial supports came out on top for the entrepreneur, and then a close second was the cost of living and housing. So it's crazy to think that, it's clear that housing is a crisis in Dublin in particular. Yeah. And it just goes to show you that we're not in the property sector, we're in a startup or an innovation sector, and it has such a fundamental impact. It's clearly a crisis situation in Ireland.
Well, I don't know if anyone is under the impression that you make a lot of money in a startup in the beginning. You do not. If you're smart, you're paying yourself as absolutely little as you can to survive.
Absolutely.
Here in Dublin, that's a lot more than it would be in some other places, but maybe not more than it would be in the Silicon Valley. But also here in Ireland, Dublin's kind of the place where you're going to have, connection to a lot of technologists, actual usable internet. A lot of places outside the city, the internet's not the best.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's harder to live without a car in places other than in the city. So I don't know. It's a hard problem. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's where I think we would benefit from having a very mature innovation model where people who feel strongly enough about these particular, like about certain issues, like, whether it be innovation in rural areas or whether it be connectivity issues, that we have an innovation sort of model there that people can plug into and say, hey, I feel strongly enough about this that I actually want to try and do something about it, and maybe try and generate a startup or try and leverage the innovation knowledge that would be in such an ecosystem to try and come up with a good solution for that. Because at the moment without innovation, it's just, let's just throw grant funding at it and try to use best effort to come up with a solution. Whereas if we can have a culture of systemic innovation in Ireland, then we suddenly have all these extra tools to solve all of these social problems that we have.
So when do you think the report will be ready for?
So the report has to be ready by the end of August.
Gotcha.
Because the pre-budget submissions they close like early September.
Okay.
So we will be suggesting it's a pre-budget submission technically for the budget 2020, but our manifesto will have recommendations that stretch well beyond that budget. And really what we want to do is elect a cultural change. So instead of, if you think back to 15, 20 years ago in Ireland, the boom of the Celtic Tiger, the incentive or the encouragement for everybody for like kids or school leavers at that point was to go to college, get skilled, and then to get it like a regular 9-to-5 job. And like that's the culture of Ireland. It's been pushed very strongly. It's about jobs, and it's about trying to bag one of these prestigious jobs in a tech multinational. And that's got us to where we are now, and it's really, promoted Ireland on the international scene. And it's great to have these tech companies in Ireland, but now we can use that as like a springboard to set up a better economy, a more fundamental innovation economy, and to sell a culture where people are joining startups and are sort of chasing maybe things that are a bit more difficult, and chasing their dreams or chasing visions, and leveraging the experience that's in the ecosystem to try and achieve, like setting up their own startup or achieving a vision. But at the moment, the culture isn't about, sort of self-fulfillment through a vision. It's more about get yourself a stable job. Yeah. And I think it's
an illusion.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It is. You look at, okay, so the large multinationals, the big ones right now, they're pretty stable, but beyond the top 2 or 3, most long-term stable jobs are not. How many do you hear about having, layoffs or other cuts that end up affecting people? So, I don't know. When I was getting into actually finally starting full-time, it seemed not that much riskier, although the pay is worse and the hours are longer.
It's a lot more satisfying, though. Right?
I know. Yeah. I try to give the right picture to listeners but it is definitely ridiculously hard, but also ridiculously rewarding.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But so I wonder if some of these ecosystem changes aren't both beneficial for the startup community, but also for innovation within larger organizations. And if having some of them as partners in this might not help. One of the first things that came to mind was like the Google Ventures.
Yeah.
Right. So they've got things going on where an ecosystem here that is more beneficial for things like that. Does that make sense? Is there some?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Google is quite good, they do have Google for Entrepreneurs. They do, Startup Grind is sponsored by, Google, I'm pretty sure. But they do sponsor a lot of initiatives in the ecosystem, and they do actually it seems like that they want to promote entrepreneurship, sort of around globally, because they do target many different hubs, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the more that they can build, like you say, a scene of innovation, then ultimately Google can tap into that then and bring some of that in-house as well. So it's certainly, it's a good point you make.
Do you know who will be the specific person I guess just the specific person that will be reviewing what you've gotten for that budget?
So the person who will be responsible for reviewing the manifesto?
Yeah. Like when it comes, so you said it's part of the pre-budget. Do you know who the target is? Or target, that sounds a little heinous, but...
Yeah, well, the pre-budget submission goes to the Department of Finance.
Okay.
But we would be aiming to have a political backer for the manifesto as well.
Yeah, I guess that's really what the question is.
I mean, whoever we can find, whoever we can tag on the back with it.
So you hear that, listeners? If you know anyone who's part of the pre-budget
submission council, maybe
submission council here in Ireland, reach out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there anything else about Startup Ireland or the manifesto going on because I guess the area is a little bit so wide that I'm not sure what is of interest to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I would just finish up, I suppose from our perspective, it's about culture. And it's about, if we don't, making recommendations for percentage points on capital gains or on any particular incentive is ultimately marginal and is not going to elicit the cultural change that is needed to really double down and have an economy based on innovation, which is very lofty. It's a very lofty vision internationally. But if Ireland already has a good name in tech internationally, right? And if they could just double down and present themselves with having a strong vision for the future to say, we're putting up our hand here. We think Ireland can base their economy on, innovation. And we commit to making that happen with all the pitfalls and all of the uncertainty that would come with that. I think that is a very, very powerful message to send out to the international community. And even before you achieve success with that vision, I think that vision alone would draw an awful lot of interest internationally in startups, in tech and innovation.
So what can we do to help? That we being myself and listeners and people listeners know.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, in Startup Ireland, we're on social media, right? So, I mean, any sort of engagement or involvement there is ultimately helpful. But, I mean, ultimately, I see the cultural change is at the moment, it's kind of like, the way the civil rights movement happened in Ireland lately, and there was a repeal for gay marriage, and that was a real big turning point in Ireland because up until then, it was kind of, it was a quiet, situation. A lot of parents wouldn't necessarily have accepted or didn't want to hear that their kids were gay. And now that has become so public that parents, are now not afraid to admit and to acknowledge, that their kids are gay. And it's brilliant, and it's not that they understand perhaps about what being gay is, but they do understand that it makes their sons or daughters happier, and that it is a thing to be, and that they are happy being that, and that the parents can say, look, I don't necessarily understand it, but I'm happy for you. Yeah. And I think that's what kind of needs to happen with entrepreneurship as well, because at the moment, it's kind of like you should go for the stable job. And if you're, I'm not sure if you've experienced this, Dave, but, I think a lot of people there, when they go out on their own at first and they have a vision, you kind of feel like you need to keep it to yourself, because people are too easy to say, I'm not sure that's going to work for you. I think why would you leave a stable job? You're in a 9-to-5 job. It's permanent. It's pensionable. It's making a lot, you're making good money there. And when you leave, you're going to be making a quarter of that. So we need to change that culture around. And I think it's about being a bit more proud to be chasing something difficult but bigger. Yeah. So proud to be in a startup.
Failure is also a bit too much of a stigma here, because chances are there's going to be failure.
Absolutely, yeah. And taking risks.
Yeah, I mean, even for startups that succeed, they're failure after failure after failure after failure.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
And changing until you get the right mix, and then that's when the success comes.
And failure can be synonymous with learning half of the time. Yeah,
it should be.
Yeah,
that's the only failure, is not learning from your failures.
Yeah, but it's very much it's a risk thing. I think here, like people don't like to see other people taking risks. It's not that. It's just not encouraged, because it's not necessarily a cultural thing. It's because culturally for the last 20 years we've been pushed towards stability, because that's what the big companies coming in offer, which is great. So now we have to take that stability, sort of learn on it, lean on it, and now say, right, now let's start taking a bit more risks. Yeah. And now let's start encouraging other people to do the same as well. And I think so there's a kind of a movement needed among your listeners and among the startup community, and it's like proud to be a startup. Oh. And it's to own it a bit more, to be a bit more proud about it, and to ultimately engage in like the Startup Ireland and try and get a bit more backing for this manifesto as well.
Are there any events? Any Startup Ireland events?
There will be.
Okay.
We haven't locked down the dates for that yet. So we're going to have a public release of the manifesto sometime soon. So, I can give you the details, Dave, and they'll be released publicly as well on socials.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, even excuse me, beyond the actual release, but as in ongoing. I don't know if status would be the right word, but networking events within, trying to bring other people from within the startup community in to talk with people from Startup Ireland, just to understand what's happening, help drive the agenda and make the connections.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean,
careful or I'll own it.
Yeah. I'm not owning such a thing at the moment, but yeah, I mean, we've had ad hoc networking events. Like we had one there about 6 weeks ago. We had a fireside chat with Mary Thompson came in. It was brilliant. She's a former CNBC reporter.
Oh.
And that kind of coincided with sort of the final public consultation that we were doing. So that was a really good event. But we haven't. You're right. We haven't had sort of a regular networking event. And I think once we release the manifesto and we see what the reception is, we're going to have to build upon the manifesto to build visibility. And I think a good way to do that would be with the regular networking events. I mean, we do Yeah, we do sort of ad hoc or informal ones, which worked out quite well.
Yeah, it'd be good to maybe get some government representatives in to have like a panel discussion between existing startups, or successful startups and maybe unsuccessful startups, and a government person to kind of make sure that those things are in front of them.
That's a good point. It's kind of like a panel discussion with tangent. They have a tangent of like startup or successful startup and policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nearly a debate, but not really a debate. But just so both sides can understand where each other are coming from.
Yeah, it's an interesting suggestion. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing over in the States that like the heads of tech are getting more and more involved in policy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think Ireland is so small that for startups to truly own remaining headquartered in Ireland, there's probably more of an opportunity and probably more of a need to get involved a bit more. You can't sort of stay away in a bubble like you can in Silicon Valley as much. And even there, they're starting to get more involved.
Yeah. Okay. So on to, I guess, Zappaz. Zappaz. Sorry. I'll get it eventually.
I think you're making me want to change the name now.
It's because I'm familiar with the company Zappaz.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is in my head a little bit, and I'm trying not to say that. And I'm trying so hard not to say that I'm butchering the name. Zappaz. No, I was wrong.
You got it.
Oh, I got it. Zappaz. So, with starting that up, other than the name change that you were not necessarily interested in doing until you had to, what's been some of the biggest challenges?
So I mean, so the way I've seen it from the start is that, I mean, it's the first startup that I've been involved in, so it's been very much a learning curve, and it's been a tool to help me learn about all of the aspects of a startup. So, I mean, I did everything backwards, everything. So I've made all the mistakes up to the point where I can start Googling about the mistakes that I don't want to make next. So, like building day will come. Yeah, did that. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to realize that, how important, vision, like having a vision, having a mission, and having a clear message is. Because I guess when I started off first, it was something slightly different, and it pivoted a few times. And so what it is now and what the idea of what it should be are kind of, they're still at a bit of a mismatch. And I realize, that I need to sort of take more innovative principles and try and do more initial testing and more measuring to aim for product market fit. And so before I would have just, okay, I'll build it and they will come. I built it, they didn't come. And then I realized, that I need to be measuring a lot more, around, sort of user adoption and trying to get feedback all the time from users. So it's about like trying to have, one key takeaway for me was trying to have continuous user conversations. And just anybody that you think is a user to try and glean some insight from them every week. And of course, there's plenty of blog posts and principles around what to do and what not to do when you're talking to potential users. So, like to try and not lead them into the product and talk about features, but to talk about the problem. And so that's been helpful.
Good. Who are you currently focused on as customers?
So it's kind of like a B to B to C, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to help like companies or organizations to form an audience. and it's basically remarket them after people answer 6 questions and give feedback. Then you have an opportunity to remarket them and say, hey, look, we're going to keep giving you updates on this feedback that you've given us, and show you the impact that you can have with us over time. Because companies want to engage with their customers, right? And customers want to be heard. But when you think about like likes, shares and follows in current social media, like it's very shallow engagement. And I think people are becoming quite frustrated with the level of influence they have, you know, by clicking lots of likes and by resharing. And so we're striving to offer a deeper, more meaningful interaction. And, you asked me a question and I kind of forgot what it was.
Who's your customer?
Yes. So, so because we're B2B2C, we have an audience which are the potential users or customers of our customers. And then we also have customers which are the companies that want to, engage with their audience. So really we're targeting like, B2C SaaS customers that are internationalized, have disparate audiences around, maybe in different markets, not necessarily only in Ireland, where they're used to having like one-on-one conversations with their users and our customers, and now they're finding that they have like a surplus or over like they're having thousands of now users on their platform, and they're finding it difficult to engage. So now there's an opportunity to use an electronic solution to give all of their customers a slice of influence on their on their like goals or their projects.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So
that's what we're aiming for, yeah. But again, we're still iterating. I mean, I guess one of the learnings that I found was very important was, again, build it and they will come. They didn't. And then I thought, well, if I approach customers, then they could put their audience in our platform. And I mean, if there's anything startups are prized about more than anything is their users that they've hard earned, you know, and if you think about like cost per customer, like they're not going to give that away for free. Yeah. So what we need to do is we need to build an audience now, and then to have an audience in our platform that are so the users need to be bought into the idea as well that they can have influence by having deeper interactions with a company. So we need to find the users first, engage with those, and then have more and more companies for them to engage with. So the intention is for a user is that, like you, Dave, you would have, you have strong opinions. You have strong, like opinions on, maybe on a product level. You might have certain products that you feel very strongly about, and if only they would have feature X, or, if only they were listening a bit more to the customers, they might understand, that we don't like this. And then on a community perspective, like you might live in a local area where you might have, feel like that you want to sort of you want things to change in the local area, engage with the community. And then there's like on a country level as well. So we're trying to give one platform where a user can have their say in no matter what aspect of their life they want, and to have their say and have influence.
Okay.
And we do that by asking them 6 questions that don't disappear.
That's, I'm trying to connect it directly to the survey filled out for the Startup Manifesto. I'm thinking through how that works, and your golden customer. You've said that SaaS is one of them, but it sounds like it's a little bit later than early startups. So startups that have started to mature, or existing, long-standing.
Yeah, well, early customer, like early startups like myself, like we should be talking to our customers directly, right?
Yeah.
So we should not be putting an electronic tool to kind of remove the uncomfortable conversations that we need to have with our customers. So that's where I wouldn't encourage. I originally thought that it might be useful for earlier stage companies, but then I realized that I can't use it myself because I need to have the direct one-on-one conversations with customers, and I would encourage other early stage companies to do the same, because it's completely fundamental to everything you do. The more of those uncomfortable conversations you're going to have, the more uncomfortable insights you will learn, and you might end up pivoting to success.
So what's next for
Zappaz? So what we're doing is we're realizing that companies won't go on without an audience, but what we want to do is add value to users. So we're fleshing out some features to have a bit of gamification around, to measure people's influence in a company or a community, so that you can be recognized as an influencer if you participate and like answer and like get involved in like doing surveys and goals or objectives you're interested in, getting involved in discussions, and just helping that company to develop like a new project or a new feature, or they have a specific goal in mind as well. So to do that, so we're fleshing out those features first, but also what we're going to do is we're going to expand the net of content that we have, and we're going to start targeting more political content, because I see that there's more value to be provided to the user if they can answer 6 questions on like in a campaign, like a public campaign, and then be kept updated in that campaign, and it'll give them like a different perspective on the content, right? Because if you want to see where a particular campaign is at the moment, if you Google it, you look up news articles, and you kind of have to do a bit of trawling to try and understand, when is this damn thing going to be ready, or what kind of direction is it going in? Whereas if you can just hit one page and just see sort of, well, here it has progressed. Here it is beyond the discovery stage. It's 20% or 30% or 40% complete. So I think, so if a campaign for, like we saw for, like gay rights, and, so that campaign could have been on the system, and then we could have kept sort of a track of its progress as it was nearing completion, and what was going to be delivered from the campaign. So we would track sort of the goals of the campaign and keep people updated as it's progressed.
Okay. So I guess, especially with the manifesto, you've already fleshed out the tool itself. I'm sure there's never not features that you want to add, but I guess you really just need more customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's very much, it's getting on more content on the system to try to entice users, add more value for them, to have more campaigns that they're interested in, give them the opportunity to get involved, have influence, and then to follow the impact that they're having over time. So that's one objective, to try and get more user adoption on the system. I read a very good article lately, and it was on first round, and I can't remember who wrote the article, but it was basically around product market fit. And it was timely. I realized I learned how to read, about something that I'm chasing, in real time, rather than do the wrong thing first and then, learn how not to do it. So, this article on product market fit was like a model that you could use to try and measure your product market fit. And it was basically, it was 4 questions to ask your customers every week or on a repeatable basis. And the first question was, something like, how disappointed would you be if you couldn't use product X anymore? And So it's like, not disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or very disappointed. And they reckoned that you would get product market fit, or you've achieved product market fit if at least 40% of people who answer the survey answer very disappointed. So that way you know that you're delivering a good value to at least 40% of people who are using the system. And it was a very good article on exactly, a tool or a way to measure product market fit.
Very nice.
I'll get you the link for that.
Yeah, please. So anything else? Anything we haven't covered?
So I guess the one other big learning for me over the last few months was around vision and actually defining a vision or a mission statement for the company, because a lot of a product changes, right? So it's like you have an idea for your product, you don't write it down, but you start developing like a product, or you start developing an idea, and suddenly you realize people don't like that idea, and you have to pivot and change it. And you are the only person that can develop a vision for your company, right? Because you have a vision there somewhere, and it's extremely helpful to write that vision down, because you're the person to create it. You're the right person to do it. If you're a CTO or a founder, and in the executive level, write down the vision, and at least then, no matter what uncertainty you're dealing with, you can just look back at that vision and go, I know there's a greater vision there and it helps it does help with decision making when you're realizing that the product is not having enough traction.
Gotcha.
So you see, if your product is not having enough traction, you have to decide, okay, well, I have to change something. But you could have multiple different paths that you could choose. And it's which path do I choose? And it's by having a very, very strongly defined vision, do you understand, well, I exclude these paths because these don't align with my vision. And so now that reduces my options. And we do best when we're operating in a constraint anyway. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I found that was very, very helpful for Startup Ireland, for us to clearly write down the vision and just get alignment for everybody who's involved. And at least then it allows us to come on, like here today, very clearly and say what the vision is. And so it's to make Ireland the best place in the world to help, ambitious young companies to start, scale, and succeed.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And so that allows us to not put a focus on things that don't help us achieve that mission.
Yeah.
And it's the same. I mean, if organizations are slow in backing the manifesto, for example, then we can turn around and say, well, if you're not helping us achieve our mission, then, we just have to keep going ahead with our vision and our mission. And if people want to contribute and feel strongly about the same vision, then we collaborate with them and we partner with them to success.
Okay, cool.
And the Startup Ireland doesn't own the vision, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not like, oh, we are the owners of this vision and you can't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody else wants to join in that vision, then we will certainly, it certainly makes sense for us to partner with an organization that will, but if another organization comes along and goes, no, I don't quite, our vision isn't quite aligned with yours, or our company mission, or company vision is something different, then we understand very quickly, that it doesn't make sense for us to change our vision to meet your vision, just so we can have a partnership together. And so I've learned that from Startup Ireland. I've applied it to Zappaz, and it's really helping with making the message a lot clearer. And so now, especially when, cause in a startup, I have sometimes you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Where am I going? By having that vision written down, I can just look at the vision and I can say, is this vision still the vision? Is it still the vision of this company or of this idea that I have? And if it doesn't, the vision can change, but at least I'm committing to it by writing it down on paper. And if I'm committing to a change, then it allows all of the other decisions to sort of fall off that.
I like it.
Yeah. So, and I have another article actually. There was, I read another brilliant article on vision, and it was from a guy called James Clear. And it was that most failures happen because of a failure of vision. So there's like a tier of failures, right? And it's failure of vision, a failure of strategy, or a failure of tactics. And if you fail to set a vision at the very start, then that failure is attributable to like the overall failure of a lot more organizations, rather than if you have a very strong vision, then a failure of strategy or a failure of tactics is easier to overcome, right? Because tactics is only execution. So if you're not executing right, it's easier to do pivot on tactic and say, okay, this is not working, let's try something different. But if you've got an overall vision, and if you're failing on your vision, then it's going to be very difficult to build a strategy and to execute on that. And so you'll find that, I realize now that I'm fundamentally failing on my vision.
Okay. No, I like that. I mean, I think that is one of the reasons that people will often get their strategy and tactics confused, because of the lack of including vision within that. So they kind of mix together strategy. Yeah.
So I've struggled with like product direction because it wasn't working. It's easy when you have, if your product is working, it's easy to say, okay, we should continue going in this direction. But if your product is failing, then it's to understand why, in one sense, but to understand why you're going to keep going is the more difficult the more difficult thing to overcome. But if you can have a strong vision, then you can overcome failure time and time again, because you have a strong vision that you still believe in. So you hit a failure, product's not working. Okay, but I still have a strong vision here. Why? And is this failure? Is my vision? Does that change? And if the failure, no, it's just a failure of you didn't, the vision is still the same. Then I can pick myself up, dust off, and go, right, let's try again. And it allows us to overcome all of this, sort of the repeatable failures that we know we're going to encounter during like startups.
All right, nice. Any call to action for the listeners that we haven't mentioned already?
Absolutely. It's define your vision.
That's a fantastic one.
Yeah, and I mean, like I say, I volunteer with the startup community. I love to hear from startups and to get involved. So if people are, struggling with vision, or they want the links of some of the things that I've encountered during my quest to define a stronger vision, they can reach out. My email is andy.o'connor, OCONNOR, at zappaz.com.
I'll definitely include links to your email, the website, the Startup Ireland, the Zappaz.
Yep.
And any social media platform that you frequent?
Well, Startup Ireland has a good following, so that's at Startup Ireland.
Okay.
And for Zappaz, it's only our own platform.
Gotcha.
It's zappaz.com.
Gotcha.
So we did do a certain amount on social media, but it didn't contribute to my product market fit, so I stopped.
I understand.
For the moment.
All right. Well, that's all.
Yeah.
Thanks you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on the show, Dave. It was brilliant.
It was fantastic. And I look forward to having you back once the manifesto is ready and being reviewed. So.
Yeah, we could do one at a networking event.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Love that. So thanks very much.
All right. Cheers, Dave.
And thank you all for listening.
Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.